to Let's Talk Tuesday. This is the podcast where we have real conversations about learning, leadership, and what it truly takes to help people and organizations grow. Each week, we bring together different perspectives, experiences, and voices to explore what learning development really means, why it matters, and how we can do it better. Today, we have a very special guest, Todd Shackelford from Omaha, Nebraska. He has over 30 years of experience in training and development, technology, and even a little recruiting. Welcome, Todd.
Hey, thanks for having me, Amanda. This is exciting.
I'm so excited. Let's talk. Tell us
Okay,
a bit about your background and what your focus is today.
great. So my background is engineering. I went to school wanted to be an architect because I love buildings. And in architecture school, I was told I'm not very creative and I should probably be an engineer. So I got into building engineering, doing structural engineering, and later electrical engineering. The industry was going through a change at the time where we were relying more and more on software, and it turned out I was a little bit of a geek with that software. So over the years, I've turned into an incredible software geek with design software and a teacher. So I teach at the University of Nebraska in their architectural engineering and construction program and at the community college here in town. So I probably should have just cut it and went straight to teaching, but I got technical before that.
That's amazing. And it's so funny. And so many people listening to this, I mean, learning development, I love it for many, many reasons. But one of the things is so people come from such drastically different backgrounds, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you think teacher and you think electrical engineer, and you're like, oh, what? How? Right? That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, and so that segues us to, what does learning development mean to you?
Okay, so I thought about that a lot because you had a great answer and your other guests have had great answers. To
And it's to
me,
you personally, because everyone's different. So.
yeah, to me, I think it's the ultimate employee-employer win-win. A lot of things are wins on either side. And I think like when I'm trying to recruit people or something, I tell them, hey, you can have a lot of vacation or we have bonuses. And those are kind of like one-way investments or enticements. It's something that the company gives up and that an employer or employee wants. And okay, that's a nice exchange. And work is kind of a contract like that. But when you are investing in learning and in your staff, the staff becomes better and the company gets more. It is a win-win where everybody wins. And I shouldn't have to, but I kind of struggle with anything else that kind of hits it that well, that everybody wins in that situation. So that's, the end part of my career, I am really focused on what I think drives the best value. And it's learning and development.
It's so, so true. One of my favorite ones from a very long time ago was, what if we train them and they leave? What if we don't and they stay? And it's so true
Amazing.
because the rising tides rise all ships, right? So I'm a big believer in that as well. As if you're not investing in your people, first of all, they're gonna want to leave anyways, but then you're
Yeah.
stuck with people who are not progressing. And with today's, especially if you're a technology junkie, like, I mean,
Mhm.
in today's world, it's not optional. You have to keep learning and growing. So.
It is not optional, and I think human nature may not always. Well, I hang around with engineers, so their typical nature is not to want to change. I figure it out once, and that's how I want to live the rest of my life. So it's particularly challenging. But yeah, if you look around anywhere, people coming and going is a real indication of how well they've been invested in or how well they think they're doing. And it, we can talk about it more, but it's basically the thing that it's a big payoff.
Yeah, it's so, so true. It's funny because one of the big clients I work with globally, it's a lithographic technology company, so they're significantly heavy, mostly engineers.
Okay.
And they are so tried and true. They've been at the same organization for 20 to 40 years. Some of them have
Oh
been
yeah.
there 50 years. And it's just amazing to see. I'm coming in like, let's do soft skills, let's do communication and leadership. And they're like, I just tell them the facts and then they go do it. And I was like, leadership's a little bit more complicated than that. Let's work on it. So
Yeah.
it's fun. It's again the variety and the diversity and just like the different backgrounds and perspectives that you get to work with when you bring all these people together. It's just so rewarding. So with that, learning and development, you mentioned this a little bit about why it's so important investing in your people, but especially in today's world, what would you say is kind of your biggest driver of what you
Yeah.
think that companies need to be like, why is it so important?
So I think about, and maybe this is something that happens to everyone when they get older. They're like, everything's changing too fast and I can't program the VCR or whatever my dad used to say. I know young in my career that there was a technology shift and I was young and I was like, oh, I'll do the computer thing because I'm not so good at the hand thing. And it turned out like none of the older people wanted to do it. So the younger people kind of had this advantage. They got into it. There's definitely generations where, because you are comfortable with computers, you're able to do a lot of things that other people who didn't want to change do it. I kind of learned early on, like embrace that change and be the first person to fail and get better and better at it. Um, but even me, when I look at the rate of change in my industry, it is just it's taken off at such a pace that I barely have time to incorporate something before I'm modifying it. And modifying things is just like standard operation now. So when I think about my business and what we're trying to do, our real value here is being adaptable as a business. We didn't ask for the internet, just showed up. We didn't ask for AI, it showed up. We have to deal with these things that show up whether we want them to or not. And those are great examples. I mean, there's lots of other things that don't have anything to do with technology, but businesses that are adaptable to what's happening are successful in that moment. They're ready to kind of go left or right or stay center. And how do you make your business adaptable? Honestly, it just boils down to having adaptable people.
Yeah.
And how do you make adaptable people? For me, that is taking all these change and putting them into a very predictable process. So how I do learning and development for people is a process that is repeatable. It doesn't matter what the change is. We've changed something, but this is the repeatable thing that they find comfort in.
Yeah.
My engineers, they might not feel comfort in something changed and I don't know anything about it. But if they are comfortable with this process that we've done however many times, they start to feel that rhythm. Doesn't matter what the change is because it's wrapped in this predictable training envelope that happens every single time. And then they kind of find themselves moving up and, hey, I can do this. So it's having adaptable people now is what makes your company successful. If you're not adaptable, it's very difficult.
What I love what you said though. So it's not just about that because yeah, having adaptable people is critical, obviously, but you're creating a safety net for those who maybe not are as adaptable. And
Yeah.
so by creating some kind of consistency in a world of chaos, right?
Yeah.
That gives them the confidence to say, okay, I know something changed and I don't like it, but I know that the last change that happened, this was handled really well, and I know I can get through it this time too. And it's so true. I love the concept of like thinking about your thinking. What you're doing is you're
Yeah.
thinking about the experience, the learner experience, and so that way
Right.
you stabilize what you can in an unstable world so that there and it's interesting you bring this up because I've had a few clients like this where they're like they always want the new innovative thing and like oh this I want something totally different but there's change fatigue. There is. And so we've already got so many changes that are occurring just in the technology world and AI and everything that's coming out. So I love that idea of the juxtaposition between having, the ability to have a bunch of change, but create the welcoming environment of it's okay. There's lots of changes, whether you're an early adapter or you're late to the party.
Yeah.
This is the process. The process is process, right?
Right. Yeah, you just made me think of like there's no shortage of people who want to sell you a solution. No matter what it is, you just buy this. And I think, from an ownership or a leadership perspective, you might say, well, there's a dollar sign. I spend this much money and then I get this value. And to me, it always feels like a diet pill or something, that's like it promises everything and there is some effect, but in the end, like doing things, the methodical way is usually gets that desired result. And so being able to handle it in a way that just makes sense. I've never had success just kind of buying a technology solution or having everybody take a personality exam. Now we know what each other are like, and now we're going to get along. It's an ongoing thing. So having this process, I use it in training, but I use it in a lot of other things. Just how we handle, how we interact with each other. That we have this predictable framework to work in, and that's really great, like you said, for the people that don't like it. We still have the early adopters, and we got all kinds of people, but being able to provide a safety net for all of them that where they feel comfort, then change is not so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a facilitator who I love, who I work with, and she always talks about the magic training wand, right? So some companies are like, just do training. And so many times training is not the solution, right? And so
Mhm.
many
Yeah.
times, I feel like half of my job is explaining to people why training is not the answer to what they're saying, and to do the
Yeah.
root cause analysis and to really understand, dig deeper, like what is really happening here and how can we make people's lives better? Because if we enhance our people, like you said, if we make their lives easier, they're going to produce better, the company's going to do better, and win-win for everybody. Absolutely.
Yeah. At the end of the day, your people's success is your company's success.
Exactly. Because the company doesn't isn't anything. I say this a lot, but companies don't, it's not a thing. It's a
Yeah.
collection of people, right? And so
Right.
how do you get a collection of people moving in the same direction and accomplishing great things?
Yeah.
So true. So, what do you wish companies knew or did differently as it relates to learning and development?
Yeah. Well, it all goes together because, what I really wish they knew is that investing in learning and development is the most sure bet any company can ever have that pays off. Like it's an investment that you make in your people. It's not a cost, it's an investment in your business. And I think there's a disconnect between like the value that a company wants and what they're willing to pay. Sometimes they're like, what's the most affordable way I can train people? Is, it's a disconnect from what your real goal is here. And I feel that most companies, we spend more money than we ever want to on training. And it's not because we did something, well, it's because we're paying on the back end for doing bad training, and we're paying on the back end for missed opportunities. We're paying on the back end for all these things. So you can always be cheap up front. But if you think about this as an investment in the company, like when my kids were getting ready to go to college, I told them, I'm going to give you some money, but I'm not going to give you all the money you need because I want you to invest in your own future and see what that means. I don't know if that was good dad moment or not, but I will say that this is an investment you make in your people, is an investment you make in your company. And if you invest wisely up front and have what I call a really connected ecosystem of not just the training and the development, but how everything works, it's very predictable, then that pays off in opportunities that you would never have had previous. The faster someone gets promoted, well, you're going to make more money off the people that are getting promoted and going on and doing different things. It makes room for other people. It gives you that longevity you need. The end of the day, it's just a really great investment. And I think a lot of companies kind of like, I want to put the little in and get the most. And they look at it that way when it's really like, I want to put a medium amount in and get even more, And you put in a little, you're going to pay that on the back end. It costs you more.
It's true. You said so many great things there. There's so many nuggets in that. So first of all, I'm hearing like the strategic aspect, right? How many times, like to your point of having to retrain or do something reactively because you didn't proactively, strategically think, how am I doing this? How am I investing in my people? How am I making sure that things are going well? I also love, you had so many great nuggets in there. I can't cover them all, but I think that, what you said will really resonate because it's so true. And when, we talk about this a lot, but when learning development doesn't have a seat at the table, at the leadership table to understand that aspect of it, a lot of companies do see it as a cost, but the word you hit on the nail is definitely investment. It is an investment in your people. And if you're strategic about it and if you're thoughtful about it and you have the right plan and vision, then it's not a cost. It truly is. This is going to get us to the next level and to really think through that. Yeah, I love that.
Well, thanks. That's cool. I don't, it sounds like I'm just being nice to you, but you're really insightful. I love that.
Thank you. I've been doing this a long time too. So I've seen
Yeah.
Groundhog's Day. When you see it enough times, you're like, you see the trends.
Yeah.
So what is one actionable tip that people listening can put to use right now, today?
Okay, well, your last speaker had like actual takeaways, so I feel like I'm not doing as good of a job. But to me, learning is very personal. That it's learning doesn't happen because I told you something. That's something that happens with the learner. right? And I try to build into all of my processes extra moments to check in with learners individually, which feels like a huge amount of time considering that you're training sometimes large groups of people, but I build in like minutes for everybody. You can have 2 minutes and I'm going to check in with you and just you. And I'm not going to give you a survey. I do surveys and stuff, but surveys don't get me what I want. What gets me is that personal interaction. So when I meet the user or the learner later on, even if it's an email and I say, hey, listen, I loved having you in the class and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you got out of it and how did that go and how can I help you now go further. Those little tiny investments, person to person, really pay off. So I really try to do that in person with them. And while I'm teaching, if you've been teaching long enough or been in that place where you're doing stuff, you can kind of look in the eyes and know that's the person I want to talk to first, because I think they're probably feeling the most lost or the most concerned about. And then I can walk through those, but I make sure I put in 2 minutes for every learner afterwards to kind of invest in them person to person. Once they kind of have that, like somebody really cares, they invest more in themselves. So it's not a trick, but it is something that I've found very predictable. If I put a little investment in you, they put a lot of investment in themselves and they want to work with you. So yeah, it does feel like a lot, but if it's 2 minutes per person, it's really not that much. And I plan out my day because I'm an engineer, where I'm like, this hour is for all these 2 minute conversations where I'm going to go find somebody and do something. And it's paid off huge for me to just make sure I have personal contact with people. I want them all to feel like they're in a safe environment to fail or try or ask me more questions. A lot of times it's call and response. This is the training. Here are other things, and we got it. Especially compliance training that we do every year to make sure that everyone's up on OSHA or whatever they need to be. They
Mhm.
go through the motions, but I'm always bringing it back to your career and I want to see you progress. And if you do well in these things, then that leads to this next thing and then this next thing that, how do we get you where you want to go?
So what you're saying is backed in science. So you're being an accountability partner too. So not only are you investing and they feel personally seen, which is the most important thing we know for people wanting to try, but being that accountability partner, oh, Todd cares and he's going to follow up with me. So if I look lost in class or if I look, if I haven't responded to something, someone cares enough to be reaching out. And so like you're saying, that we've seen that, they've done studies on this and that's proven to significantly increase engagement. And it's funny taking it back to what you said about your kids going to college and the bad dad moment. No, so that's also, again, been proven time and time again is that when people physically invest their own time, their own energy, their own money, as they have skin in the game, they are going to be more likely to do what it takes to be successful than someone who it's just handed to them and they think, oh, well, if I don't get it, just get it from the next one, right? So no, that's definitely backed by what we're seeing. Like there's been a lot of in psychology. I love psychology. I love kind of understanding what makes people tick. And both of those things are tried and true methods. And they have so much value in them. That's amazing. Love it. And very,
They
very
kind
valuable.
They kind of amplify as you go. So I make that first 2 minute commitment, and then I'll usually get a follow up from them. And during that follow up, I think of something, and what happens is we start to get a cadence of back and forth. And if I'm doing a yearly evaluation on them or something, I've got a backstory and then we're part of it. It's not like, well, here you are. I see you once a year. Here's a raise or whatever I do. It is, we've been talking the whole time. And the other thing it does is this is crazy, but it's usually on me a lot of the times as a supervisor that because I've had those talks, right after a talk, I'll go, oh, I just had an opportunity for something and I just talked to that person. I'm going to I connect the dots a lot better and they connect the dots a lot better for opportunities that come up because we're making it an active part of our communication to each other.
Yeah.
And it's easy for that stuff to go straight to the background.
Yeah, it's so true. I'll tell you my favorite. So one of my favorite things I love to ask, it's not 101. I do have favorites for 101 too, but my
Yeah.
favorite one after you end facilitating a class, a group, no matter the size is I usually like to ask at the way end, what was the most helpful for you? Like what takeaway are you getting from this? And I'm always just floored by the drastic difference in responses. And I love it for so many reasons because one, it reinforces. So their favorite part of something is going to be something different than someone else's. So it reinforces for the rest of the group to hear, oh, yeah, that was a good point. Or, oh, I didn't think of it like that. And so it's reinforcement. It creates, did my message come across as a facilitator, right? Are they picking up what I'm trying to get to them? And then also what I love about it is to see the variety and perspectives of this person had this favorite takeaway, this person had this favorite takeaway. So it's one of my favorite things to ask in a group setting. And then also like when people go to conferences or trainings, it's one of my favorite questions because it's always interesting to see their perspective of it. And I feel like there's always opportunity to learn for us too, right? I can teach the same thing 20
Yeah.
different times, but if I personalize it like you're doing, you personalize it to that individual, then it doesn't get old. It doesn't feel like you're just going through the act because it's always new and different because their perspective is always going to be new and different.
As a teacher, I love that bit where we have a conversation. And you ask what was the favorite part. Somebody says this, someone goes, "Oh, I don't think so. I like this part." It turns into that conversation where we're processing it more than just accepting it. That really pays off. And I love hearing what other people said. And I'm going to give away like how old my kids were when they were little, but Dora the Explorer always
Mhm.
ended with, "What was your favorite part?" And I
Oh
used to
yeah.
do that just because I thought it was funny. But yeah, I love like you're just saying, what was your big takeaway? That really is something where it starts that conversation. It also gets individuals thinking about, well, what did I get? And that first recall, like the more I travel that path, the more it sticks.
Yeah.
So brilliant. I love that.
I love it. It's one of my favorite ones. It's because I love people and it's always so interesting to hear people open up about what they're gaining from it and to see them put it to use is like the icing on the cake. So but
Also, do you kind of pick up like, I'm going to lean into this next time I do it. Like this part had value and I didn't realize that. Like you're learning too about what's happening. So I've been teaching at the college level for 18 years now. And what I realized is this freshmen 18 years ago wanted it a certain way. And that's not what the freshmen I have this year. They're very different. I have to keep evolving my teaching style for who I'm teaching and how they want things presented and keeping my goal in mind. My goal is not to deliver. My goal is to advance them so they're ready for the next set of classes and that they have this knowledge, and I've changed a lot about my teaching style over the years but I keep coming back, what was my goal? And the same thing's true with the people here at work. My goal is to advance them as fast as they want to go. Maybe a
Mhm.
little faster than they want to go sometimes. I want them to have that option. So whenever I have a thing like I always bring it back to, is this directly affecting my goal of advancing people or is it not? And it's so simple when I bring it back to like, what is our goal here? My goal is not to get this information out and leave. It is, did this work? Am I getting those things? And you have to have that follow up afterwards to know it.
And that's the fun of it, really.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Wow.
you so much. This has been so much fun, and I could talk to you all day, but we'll keep it short and sweet. So, Todd, thank you so much for joining us. So much value, and we are excited to have you. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate you having me on. You have such a great scientific background and your guests are amazing. So I'm just happy to be part of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time. We've loved having you here. We've covered a lot of ground, but just wanted to thank you so much for being part of today's episode. And with that, we'll begin to wrap up. So I hope this discussion gave our audience a few new perspectives, sparked some ideas, and left you with at least one takeaway you can put into action immediately. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and join us every Tuesday as we continue exploring learning, leadership, and what it takes to help people and organizations grow. And if today's conversation resonated with you, or if you'd like to join me for a future episode, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and let's talk again on Tuesday. Thanks, everyone.